Mm-hmm. Ojvazod, Odavari, welcome to the world building stream. It's me, and I bet there's lag, because there's always lag whenever I switch setups. How's everybody doing? It is Sunday night, and it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to come join you here on the stream. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to do so. Yeah, I've got a bit of a headache, man. A lot of eye strain staring at computers all day. I also have not been sleeping as much as I should. I was up late last night. I am sad to report that I have stumbled back into the same pitfall that I fell into as a young man in 8th grade, and I am playing Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you know this about Magic the Gathering, but you can play that game online now, and that makes it all the more difficult to say no. So I've been playing a lot of Magic, and it's been hurting my eyes, I think, to constantly stare at screens. So I thought, what better way to cure that headache than to come here and stare at some more screens. I think the streaming is so weird because there's so much like stress involved in getting it set up and doing it. But then when you do it, you feel really accomplished, you know, like not only do we make good progress on the campaign, whatever I'm working on, but then you also feel like, oh man, I did it. I went out there and I interacted with my community and it was good. But the temptation to just not do that every week is so strong that I really have to fight sometimes if I'm not feeling up to it to kind of make myself do it, because I'll always be grateful after the fact. But right before I do it, I'm always just like, I don't wanna. performance anxiety a little bit, I think. But enough of me complaining. Let's tuck in, because that will help make me feel better. Today, we are talking about random encounters. So this is a document, one of many dozens of documents that comprise my my setting Bible for my upcoming Dwarven campaign. Someday we will play this game. And this one is all about random encounters. So you'll see that I have a long list of different monsters on the far left here. And then we have different environments kind of across the top. I haven't put numbers in yet because I'm not sure exactly how frequently they appear, but I have broken it down into the different biomes and environments you might find these different monsters in Khûm. And we have done Arctic forest, hill, mountain, and tundra monsters for the most part, but we didn't really tackle the underground monsters. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to go generate some ideas for what kinds of random encounters the party might stumble their way into as they explore Khûm, specifically as they explore the kind of subterranean layer of Khûm. The way that these work, they're pretty simple. What I like about this kind of a stream is that it's just ideas generation, right? There's not a lot of like work that needs to be done. But I will always, I like to come up with 3 hooks per monster. And it's just like a quick, like one to 2 sentence hook to give me kind of a premise to what this encounter would be. The conceit is that the campaign will likely feature a lot of overland travel of the characters moving between different locations in this Dwarven kingdom. And so I wanted to have a short list of things they might encounter as they cross from location to location, based on the biome that they're moving through. So for example, the Ankheg, I always have 3 different ideas, not necessarily because I would use the Ankheg 3 times, but more because depending on the tone and the pacing and the previous encounters that the characters have seen so far, that might make a difference in terms of what kind of encounter I want to throw at them, next. So if they've just had a difficult combat encounter, I probably don't want to follow that with another difficult combat encounter. So I like to structure them like this. I always like to have one hook that is like clearly a fight. This is just like kind of unambiguously, this thing attacks you. Maybe you can defuse it or escape, but it is sort of proposed as a combat. One encounter idea that is proposed as a non-combat scenario, very kind of decidedly so. It's not immediately a fight, and it likely won't be one unless the party kind of forces the issue. And then one that kind of straddles the line, where it could sort of go either way, and depending on how the party reacts initially, that determines whether it's a combat encounter or not. So rather than me explaining an abstract, let's pick an example. So we have the Ankheg, the first one, I think this is the combat one. An Ankheg attacks a party that draws too close to a herd of giant beetles. So for context, the Ankhegs in Khûm are less sort of random predators, and they're more trained sheepdogs that are used by the Grimlock herders that live underground. And so this idea here is just that you happen to get too close to a herd of giant beetles, and this Ankheg jumps out and attacks you. Pretty straightforward black and white combat. The next one is... there's some typos here. The characters discover a dead Grimlock and loot its pheromone bladder. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little actually hard for me to read. It's a little bit small. Let me bring this over here where I can read it better. Yeah, look at all these typos. Meaning... that the Ankhegs now serve them. Like, as long as they carry this thing, they might be accompanied by an Ankheg, right? So decidedly not an Ankheg, not a combat encounter. And then lastly, the characters stumble into the acid-drenched lair of an Ankheg queen. They'll need to move quickly and quietly to avoid drawing its attention. So that one, again, could be a combat if you kind of like fail this little stealth objective, or you could just charge in and fight the Ankheg queen. So that's kind of how they're paced out. It's like combat, non-combat, could be either. And they're not necessarily in that order. We just kind of write them down in the order that we think of them. In addition to that, I have, as you might have noticed with the Ankheg, I have a tendency to reflavor monsters that appear in the monster manual. Not all of them, but I always like to give them a little bit of a unique spin to say, this is how my Ankhegs or my, black puddings or my whatever it is are different from the ones that are printed in the books. So I have another document here that I'm not sure how visible it is. Yeah, you guys can see it okay. That lists kind of a summary of the different monsters that we've built on our monster building streams. not the Thursday ones, the Sunday world building ones, but we kind of have a bigger focus on monsters some weeks more than others. And so if we need to, we can come back here and refer to them. I just wanted to make sure we had that ready to go. Great. So I thought we were going to start with the Ankeg, but it turns out I have already designed the Ankeg, so that's cool. We can move on from there. And the first monster we're going to try to figure out hooks for is the Behir, which is, I think, ironic because the Behir was the monster we focused on last week in our Monster of the Week episode. Speaking of, if you haven't checked it out yet, there's a new Monster of the Week out today on our Patreon, on our podcast feed, which I don't think you can find a link to below, but you can certainly find it by checking out our Twitter. And it's a great episode. It is a deep dive into mind flayers with a friend of the show, Mythomatic. So go check that out. It was a great episode. Just a quick little plug while we're talking about the podcast. So Behirs are interesting because the conceit here, looking at our monster doc, is that here I kind of focus on specifically the Behirs in Khûm, but there's a few things that make my Behirs different. We talk about this in the podcast a little bit, but they have a slightly different life cycle in Ondune, where they are sort of born from shocker lizards, which are like little reptilian, kind of electric-powered, sort of Pokemon-like monsters. And the shocker lizard is if it receives enough electricity while it's still in the egg, instead of maturing into a shocker lizard, it grows into a full-grown Behir, right? So it's kind of like a supercharged shocker lizard. Cosmologically, though, Behirs in Ondune were originally created by Yogg early in sort of prehistory as an attempt to kind of challenge the power of dragons. And that's one of the reasons that they despise them so much, right? They were kind of like engineered to do that. Which is funny because that's one of the things that I like I objected to in the design of the Behir. But again, like, Yogg is a god, right? It's a little bit different if a god makes you than it is if, like, intelligent people create, like, servitors, right? I mean, Yogg's not a god, but you get it. So the question here is that, what do Behirs have to do with Khûm? What's going on with the Behirs in Khûm? And I think this is actually kind of a fun story. So historically, there's a queen in Khûm named Dunya Dragonsbane, and she is known for having defeated and driven all of the red dragons out of Khûm. It's why there are no red dragons there currently. And that was thousands of years ago before the campaign began. But I liked the idea that because there were no dragons there, these Behirs like came to Khûm, right? And thought like, oh great, this is like a dragon-free zone. This is where we belong. And then during the Sorrows, several white dragons come and like take up residence in Khûm because of this endless winter that falls upon it. So now these Behirs who moved here to escape the dragons are now kind of put upon by the arrival of these new dragons. So because they have this hatred of dragons, I always think of Behirs as being interesting potential allies, and that's kind of the angle that I maybe want to go here, right? So, you know, under the culture, we have, like, despisers of dragons. The Behirs of Khûm endlessly plot their downfall, but to no avail. They have even banded together in their few numbers to make common cause against the draconic foe, but spend so much time planning and scheming that they've yet to make a direct strike against a dragon. To make matters worse, they despise each other nearly as much as they despise the dragons and are always plotting upon plotting, right? So I like them as these kind of inept schemers. So returning then to the hooks, I think one of the very obvious ones, right, is that a Behir, this is the like non-combat one, approaches the party about potentially allying against one of the white dragons that dominate Khûm. So there are 3 white dragons that are kind of the most prevalent. There are three white dragons that are kind of almost in control of Khûm at this point. Hey, what's up, 2 Army Kid? White dragons arrive. Exactly. There are 2 younger ones, 2 like wormlings. Well, there goes the neighborhood. Precisely, 2 Army Kid. Precisely. There are 2 younger ones and 1 older one. The older one, Urazanoth, is basically constantly asleep. Whereas her 2 spawn, her brood, Basilkar and Batharax, I think, are the two, are the ones that are more active and running around. So, yeah, I like the idea of a Behir being interested in, allying with the party. That one feels very clean to me. I think the combat one is probably a paranoid Behir. Like when the party stumbles on its lair, a paranoid Behir attacks the party, accuses the party of spying for the dragons. And attacks them. Right, so it's still a combat, but there's a little bit of extra kind of spin on it that like it believes that they were sent by some enemy. That's the kind of encounter that like I can definitely see a PC trying to turn into a negotiation, and I think that's fine. And then I think for the third one, my instinct is to do something where like it's kind of similar to the first one, right? But as they cross, let's talk about the Stoneway a little bit too. Let's do this. The party overhears several Behirs discussing their plan to attack one of the dragons. They can either... Hey, what's up, Robert? Thanks for coming. Yeah, Robert, that's one of my favorite things about about them is that like they're so obviously evil, right? And like treacherous. That like, yeah, you could definitely work with one, but you kind of know that eventually, and that like it isn't like it's a betrayal, sure, but if you know it's coming, is it really a betrayal? They only have 7 intelligence, so they're smart enough to make plans, but they're not really smart enough to like, disguise those plans very well, to ignore it and sneak past, or confront the Behirs. And I like that one too because, if it's multiple Behirs, that's a pretty challenging encounter, right? Like, you really probably don't want to antagonize them because you're gonna have to fight 2 or 3 CR11 Behirs, which is pretty nasty. Great, cool. I think those are really fun. I think that really plays into the concept, at least the concept that I like about Behirs, where they're these kind of inept schemers. Cool, I love that. So really quick, I want to talk about the Stoneway a little bit. So the Stoneway is... I have a confession. Yeah, your sudden and inevitable betrayal is exactly right. Like you see it coming a mile away. So on some level, you can almost like double cross the double crosser, right? If you know that that this Behir is gonna betray you, you can kind of make a contingency, for when that happens. Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the Stoneway, and I have a confession to make. The Stoneway is kind of Khûm's and really Ondune's like answer to the Underdark. Right, it is like a large collection of underground, tunnels and passages and caverns. Yeah, exactly. Pinky and the Brain is totally right. Yes, where they believe themselves to be these megalomaniacal schemers. Who makes another good example of like a brain type is a Beholder. I think a Beholder is like the archetype of brain from Pinky and the Brain, right? Where they are powerful, I guess, but they're also kind of inept. But the Stoneway is, kind of my answer to the Underdark. It's ostensibly this subterranean realm where, there's caverns and passages and tunnels and stuff. My confession is that I actually don't really like the idea of the Underdark. I've never really been a big Underdark fan. I think I understand why it exists, and I'm sure that like you can run cool stuff there. I've definitely done cool stories in basically the Underdark, but I've always felt that it was like a little over serious, while also being kind of too silly at the same time. It just felt like this. I don't like the idea of anything that is like a big given, that all D&D worlds have this trait. All D&D worlds have this one set of mountains. Feels crazy to me, in the same way that saying that all D&D worlds have an Underdark, right? And that it covers the entire world, and it's just all of these caverns and this whole like hollow earth other society. But if this is a dwarven campaign, right? obviously so much of like the dwarf story is about living underground and sheltering yourself from the surface and kind of being ignorant to the ways of, you know, the people that live on the top, on the surface. So like you have to have something like that. But this notion of just there's just an Underdark and it goes unexamined, I felt like was a little bit empty of potential story. So kind of what I'm doing is that this part of the world, this continent, is called Rubicos. And Khûm is just kind of like a large region. I like to think of Khûm as kind of being like Alaska to Rubicos is North America. Like it's a big section. It's kind of like off in the corner, a little bit isolated. But the thinking is that Rubicos in general has a lot more caves and caverns than other places do. It is much more mountainous, so that makes sense. But there isn't like a huge interconnected labyrinth of these caves. You know, there's a lot of mining and there's a lot of, you know, subterranean activity. And Khûm even a little bit more than that. So if Rubicos has a lot, Khûm has even more. And beyond that, the dwarves themselves did like 50 to 60% of the work in making these passages and tunnels. It's called the Stoneway, and the idea is that like most of the time if the dwarves are going to travel from one place to the other, they're going to take Robert James is exactly right. It is directly inspired by the Deep Roads, right? They're going to take the Stoneway rather than taking, you know, what they call the Skyway or going over on the surface. One of the dwarven monarchs took that even a step further, and rather than just saying, okay, here's a tunnel you can walk from here to here, they designed like a magical underground rail system, which has now kind of taken on the name of the Stoneway. But yes, it is a direct reference to like a subway. And so there's these large carriages made from stone that slide around. I think Ba Sing Se in Avatar does something similar, but imagine like an underground version of that. So they built tons of tunnels and terminals and stuff underground to help them move around quicker. So now not only do you have the caverns, but you also have these dwarven-made roads and passages and things, right? Halls, mines, all that stuff. And then to make matters even worse, one of the like precursors to the Seven Sorrows, like the big cataclysmic event that kind of brought low the kingdom, was that the volcano in the center of Khûm exploded, right? It erupted for the first time in a couple thousand years. And leading up to that, there were tons of earthquakes and tremors. So I think that a lot of these tunnels and passages that were maybe like discrete were merged when this happened. So now Khûm is much more of kind of a crazed Underdark style warren of all these different passages. I mean, if you want to get even further, there are some monsters like Umber Hulks and not Xorn, because I think they phase through stone. I don't actually know. I should check that out. Potentially Xorn, but definitely purple worms that live in the area that would have made even more tunnels. So naturally a lot of caves anyway. And then the dwarves built a bunch of stuff. And then there were earthquakes. And then in the 500 years since, there have been a lot of monsters that normally would be kept in check by the dwarves running around and causing a bunch of destruction. So I think that's kind of the milieu we're looking at. Like there are some places down here that are man-made, there are some places down here that are monster-made, and there are some places down here that were formed that either like are ancient caves or were formed by more recent tectonic or seismic activity. So I think it's cool because it gives you a lot of different avenues into like what kind of cave is this and why was it here and what's the design of it. I think one of my problems with the Underdark is that there's no explanation for why there are so many caves underneath the entire world. Like that would be a very strange and unusual thing that is a big difference from our world, and it just goes unexamined. So with all that out of the way, let's dive back in. These are all like underground monsters, right? All subterranean monsters that would be moving around in the Stoneways. And so kind of trying to keep that in mind as we're coming up with random encounters. So next up on our list is the Black Pudding. A Black Pudding is an ooze, and I have done like a little bit of a different spin on the Black Pudding. Oh yeah, that's true. We can always come over here and look at these adventure hooks. These are sometimes really good ways to do it. They don't work always for random encounters, but sometimes they can. So my kind of take on the Black Pudding, you know, it's still an ooze, those cold damage, all that stuff. But they are basically like magical runoff, right? If there's like powerful magic, a black pudding can sometimes form if there is like an excess of it.
They're kind of like molten magical slag, often used in the creation of magic items and artifacts. They tend to dwell in darkness and slag pits for years, content to feed on the magical slag poured onto them. Only when this food source abates do they rise and seek more delicious prey. They're not above attacking a humanoid to get at their magical equipment. So it's less about, they're almost like a rust monster or something where they're not really after the meat, but they are after the magic. And, if you're a wizard, you're a spellcaster, a black pudding might be even more interested. I mean, a sorcerer is a great example, right, of someone who has like inherent magic. But yeah, it's kind of like a toxic sludge if it was a real creature, and powered by magic. So let's look at our hooks here and see if there are any good ideas we can pluck from here. So one of them, the first one here, a black pudding stalks the characters, hungry for one of their magic items, I think is perfect. Like, as far as the regular, like, one of these monsters attack, that one is like super easy, super simple, but has the interesting angle that like it probably attacks the character with the most magical or the best item, right? So it's got a little bit of an extra twist on it. So the next one is the characters must capture a black pudding to restore an artifact's magic. That's cool. Yeah, maybe they like contain some of it, but that's not a great random encounter. That's more of like an adventure hook. And then lastly, a failed magical experiment in a dwarven hold creates an enormous ooze. Yeah, I don't hate that one. That, again, feels a little bit more like a plot hook and less like a random encounter. So let's do, one of these is a black pudding stalks the characters hungry for their most powerful magic item. I think that one's great. That's the combat one. Hungry for their most powerful magic item. I'm trying to think of like what's one that would be non-combat with a black pudding. You know what I mean? So one of the tricks I've discovered with this system of coming up with these random encounters is that it is very easy to kind of like exhaust all of the possibilities, right? So, you can do you come across a wounded one, you come across two monsters fighting, you come across a tamed one, someone is hunting them and offers a bounty, that kind of stuff. It's easy to kind of like, I think, run aground on those. And like end up recycling them over and over again. And some recycling isn't necessarily bad, but I'm always trying to come up with like what's a unique spin on these things. So like classic ooze encounters to me are, it's on the ceiling or it. Yeah, I definitely think it makes sense they would find one while exploring ruins, abandoned areas. Maybe that's, yeah, I'm thinking of like the opening scene of the opening scene of Fellowship of the Ring. The first scene in the Mines of Moria in Fellowship of the Ring, right? Where they come through and there's all the dwarven skeletons. Like, do they find a place where a black pudding like drank, like devoured the people and left the bones and ate the magic items, right? Like, is there something like that? And what do? I think they just like eat the magic off of the items. So I think there's something kind of cool about like it's not a combat encounter because it's not there anymore, but they come across an area that the black pudding recently has been, and hopefully that puts them on higher alert, right? Like the party, while crossing through some ruins, the party discovers a black pudding's last meal. The bones, the armor, and the disenchanted magic items left in its wake. So there's this suggestion like something came through here, chewed through them, right, but was mainly interested in their gear. Okay, that's cool. So that one's a non-combat one, right? Because it doesn't actually attack them, but it just kind of like, ooh, there's something spooky out there. And like that could be a thing where you pair them, right? Like you do the first one, and then later when you get another random encounter, you have the black pudding attack them. So let's think of one that could kind of go either way, where they encounter it, and I'd like to have it actually be in the encounter this time because we kind of we punted a little bit on the previous one. They encounter it, but it isn't necessarily an immediate danger. Like my instinct is, I feel like jars and like ceilings and wells and like bodies of water are like a good kind of milieu to encounter an ooze like that. So I'm trying to think of like what's a context in which that might happen, right? Like a pool or a puddle or something. Feels a little straightforward, and doesn't really play into the idea of it being after magic. Yeah, boy. This one's tricky. This is a hard one to like come out of the gate with. But here it was a lot easier. The black pudding. Like, I like the idea of them thinking it's water, or like the it makes me think of the scene of The Hobbit, right? They've like crossed the Black River in Mirkwood, and like I think Bombur falls into it and then like falls into an eternal sleep, and there's like never any explanation as to like why. Obviously that's not what would happen here, but the idea of them like thinking that one type of like some body of water is actually water, but it turns out to be a black pudding feels strong. But it's like that just feels like it would be a combat encounter. Do they find one like trapped? Do they find one like trying to dissolve something? Yeah, what if it's like there's a magically sealed door?
The characters uncover a vault. Stumble across a sealed dwarven vault. Oh, you know what? Actually, instead of a vault, that's a little more elaborate. A ferric metal component towards the strongest man. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, I like the idea that it's like it's magnetized to them. I think it's that like a black pudding devours a valuable magic item. Devours a valuable magic item. It's distracted, allowing the party to escape. But that magic item is quite a prize if they can claim it. So it's like you could like it is definitely more interested in this. And again, exactly the strongest magic item / person. Like that's the thing it's most interested in. So you discover one that has gotten its pseudopods on something valuable, and you can see what it is, and it's distracted, so you could easily just get away. Or if you want that item, you can go for it, right? Yeah, okay, cool. That's good. I like that one. So that's the black pudding. What's next? The Carrion Crawler. Okay, let's talk about Khûm's Carrion Crawlers a little bit. They're kind of similar, actually. They are voracious scavengers. I kind of think of them as being like gigantic roaches. They don't really look like roaches, but it's kind of like the role they play. It's a virtually unkillable scavenger, dwelling in midden heaps and breeding at a prodigious rate. Well, they were kind of originally thought to be a blessing because they would like eat through the dwarven trash. A carrion crawler in a dwarven midden heap eventually spells disaster, as they'll quickly overwhelm whatever food supply the dwarves provide and come searching for more. Right, whole holes are occasionally closed and condemned thanks to carrion crawler infestation. So yeah, very much like a giant roach, So the hooks, we have Horn Hollow, which is the central, the hub of the campaign, becomes infected with carrion crawlers. Not great for random encounter. The only way into a securely locked hold is through its midden hole. So yeah, then finding carrion crawlers is interesting. I like this one. The party discovers carrion crawlers eating troglodyte eggs. So one of the weird little things that I wanted to talk about this. So troglodytes in Khûm are not just kind of stinky lizards like they are in the Monster Manual. They are biological weapons, kind of engineered by Yogg to try to basically eradicate dwarves. They are essentially like xenomorphs in that they have multiple stages and they're very spooky and they're much more of a horror monster. And they're like droves of them running around. They were one of the sorrows with this infestation of troglodytes. So, their blood is acid, and they have all of these like horrible body horror reproductive things. It's very much like a xenomorph. But the conceit here is that the carrion crawler might be the only creature that can actually like eat and digest and predate on a troglodyte, right? Like if you're doing the kind of like roach surviving the apocalypse thing, it's like a carrion crawler is the honey badger. It just like doesn't give a shit. It doesn't care how scary you are. It's hungry and it's going to eat your shit. So I like the idea of them coming across a nest of carrion crawler. The party discovers a carrion crawler eating a nest of troglodyte eggs.
So it's a little, it's like, it's not, kind of like the black pudding was. This is what I mean. You're going to end up reusing the same idea a bunch of times. But it communicates something different, right? There's no chance you're going to run in there and get a cool magic item, but it does communicate to you that, like, actually Carrion Crawlers seem to be kind of proof against this terrible foe, right? This awful enemy that the dwarves are trying to eradicate, or that conversely are trying to eradicate the dwarves. So I don't hate the idea of having to crawl through something, but like this one to me is the non-combat one. This is the one where like you see it and it's busy and it doesn't come after you because it's got something better to eat. So we need one where it's a threat. Yeah, so what if one of them, this is not a threat, right? But like while camping, a Carrion Crawler. Oop, campaign. Like I say, I spell the word campaign so many times that my autocorrect was like, "You didn't mean camping. You meant campaign." A Carrion Crawler approaches. Well, let's just do this. A Carrion Crawler approaches the campsite. Drawn by their rations. They can feed the creature, and it's sated. But it never stops asking for food and eventually attacks. Like there's no world in which it can like be tamed or is sated, right? I don't know if anybody else read Animorphs, but I think that the Carrion Crawler is kind of in the back of my head reminiscent of a Taxxon, Taxxon, which were these like horrible centipede monsters that were just like full of all-consuming hunger all the time. And I kind of think that's what the Carrion Crawlers are like, right? Like they just always eat forever, you know, no reason not to. So I think that one is the kind of, it's in the middle one. Like you could just attack the Carrion Crawler. And I think eventually you would need to scare it off or kill it, but its main thing, like the main way you would presumably interact with it is that you would feed it, right? So now we need one where it just like straight up attacks the party, and that's that, right? Trying to think, you know, beyond just like a hungry Carrion Crawler attacks, which isn't a particularly interesting hook, right? Or encounter. So we did with the Behir, we did like multiple Behirs. So my instinct, yeah, is that it's like a nest of them, right? Like a lot of Carrion Crawlers. But then like depending on what level you roll it at, that might be, you know, more lethal than not if it's a specifically a combat encounter. What's the angle? What's the spin on this? That way it isn't just a Carrion Crawler attacks. Carrion Crawlers. Like I like garbage. I like carcasses and carrion and stuff, right? Like it is called a Carrion Crawler. But like, so any the thing though is that like what's tricky is saying, okay, then I mean we could say that the Carrion Crawler coming and being attracted to your campsite is the guaranteed combat, because eventually, yes, it will fight you. I wonder if there's one where an enormous carcass has drawn a bolded carcass. Enormous carcass has drawn a swarm of Carrion Crawlers. It's kind of like the other ones, right? But like to pass by, the characters must avoid drawing their attention. You know, but then you can get something kind of cool about like, yeah, it's a dead whale, or it's a dead, you know, it wouldn't be a whale, but like a bullet or a huge bug or something like that, and they're all crawling all over it and devouring it, you know. If you want to have multiples of them. I think that's okay. I don't love it, but I think it's fine. Oh, we don't have Cave Fisher done yet, so maybe let's skip Cave Fisher for now. On our Monsters of Khûm. I have a rough idea, but we haven't developed them, so let's maybe wait to do that. Let's start with the Chagrin. So the Chagrin is interesting. It's kind of like a they're different in actual established lore. But it's funny because they're kind of like The Carrion Crawler here. A large and cantankerous subterranean omnivore. A chagrin will eat just about anything it gets its bony jaws around. Precious metal, fungi, living prey. They're enormous mammalian creatures with 4 legs, shaggy pelts, and gruesome skull-like visages, kind of like big evil badgers. Oh, that's cool. They show up like portents of battle, much like crows or other birds have been known to do. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. 2 army kid. That maybe it's you know, not necessarily a giant carcass. It could be a battlefield. That's neat. They are known for their incredibly powerful bites and their stomachs, capable of digesting everything from flesh to stone. They have ornery dispositions and will frequently attack with little or no provocation. Otherwise, they spend much of their time sleeping and scrounging for food. So then the Ormvorax is a subspecies, and they are specifically, they're twice as feral, but they're specialized to only eat gold. So they've always existed in Khûm as their history, but they were specially bred. Ormvoraxes were specially bred by a particular clan to help find gold. The Ormvorax went extinct due to the lack of gold. The chagrin continued just fine when all the kind of minerals dried up, because they eat everything. And they're plentiful in the subterranean areas of Khûm. But look at some of these hooks are almost identical to our Carrion Crawler ones, right? Like while camping on the ground, a chagrin sniffs through your belongings. Ooh, I do like the party encounters a living Ormvorax, potentially the last living specimen. That's cool. Yeah, let's take that one for a chagrin. A living Ormvorax, potentially the last living specimen. Camping underground, a chagrin sniffs through your belongings. So one needs to be a chagrin attacking. I feel like we keep doing this where it's like the party has something valuable and then the monster attacks seeking it. But that's my immediate instinct here, right? Like if they're these big kind of mean, cantankerous like underground wolverines, you know, and they'll attack anything and they're completely fearless. Like badgers are that way. Badgers are like totally mean asshole monsters. Again, like the honey badger thing, right? So like, I mean, maybe the combat encounter is that like, there's this like super pugnacious chagrin that like isn't much of a threat really, but it just like will not leave them alone, right? The party is harassed. But that seems more territorial than it is hungry, you know? I like the idea of precious gems or something like that. Like they're populous in Khûm right now because the gems and the precious minerals and stuff have come back, and so you know, they kind of thrived in this time. So we've done like cubs, and we've done like wounded, and we've done like trapped. You know what I mean? Yeah. Gosh, this is a tricky bunch of monsters. I might want to come back because I feel like we just did that with the Carrion Crawler. Let's do it. Let's go to Cloaker. So the Cloaker is a particularly weird monster, I think, in Dungeons and Dragons in general, but it needed, I think, one of the biggest rehauls. So my Dark Mantles are a little bit different as well. The Dark Mantle is like, you know, the squid thing that lands on your head and wraps around you. All of that is still true by Dark Mantles, but they kind of work like the brain slugs in Futurama, where they can kind of steer you around. And so on Dune, a Cloaker is a matured version of a Dark Mantle. It's kind of like the subterranean predator, and then it's skilled at ambushing, and then it controls its humanoid hosts. So, you know, it's normally kind of like a weird bat-winged, leathery, flying cloak monster. But my version of them, rather than just looking like cloaks, they like stick their pincers into the neck of a victim, right? And then kind of steer them around. And so like the interesting thing about a Dark Mantle is that if it lands on your head and is controlling your body, there's no like subterfuge. You know that person is being controlled because there's a fucking flying squid on their head. But the Cloaker is a little bit stealthier, right? So Dark Mantle grows large enough, it transforms into a Cloaker, pierces the neck of its victim, and steers them around. They are harder to detect than the Dark Mantle, able to control their hosts on a more sophisticated level. They lead Dark Mantle cults, and they use humanoid hands to help them shape their underground layers to their strange and alien whims. So historically, there was like briefly a Dark Mantle panic when there was like a clan of dwarves that kind of fell under the sway of Dark Mantles and Cloakers when they were, you know, purged. When the sorrows were really going wrong, there was one clan who kind of returned to their old ways. and they remain in Khûm, sworn to their strange religion. Are they Darrow now? So there's definitely like still a clan of Cloaker dwarves that live down there. I like the idea of them as Darrow. So yeah, here's perfect hook. One of the hooks is the characters encounter a lost traveler in the Stoneway with a Cloaker attached. Yep, that's great. The Cloaker attached. Perfect. I think the next one also kind of works. A magical cloak turns out to be a Cloaker and it possesses them. Because I think, like, with a Cloaker attached, this one doesn't have to be a combat. Like, they just find a traveler, and it's up to them whether they want to free this person. The characters stumble upon a cult of the Dark Mantle, people who were not controlled, but were and are now devoted religiously to the Dark Mantle. I think that's cool. I think we would want to flesh it out a little bit. I wonder if it's like a Darrow cult. Yeah, the characters stumble onto a Darrow cult, all wearing dark mantles, and sworn to the Cloaker leader. You know, it feels like a scene in Indiana Jones, right? Like you see the ritual, but you don't necessarily have to interact with it if you don't want to. Yeah, cool. The Cloaker. Chagrin is still tough. I'm not sure Chagrin. Let's go to Chrismal. So this is an older, kind of more obscure monster. They're like little tiny scavengers. And again, I've reflavored them, but they're little insect like parasites that burrow their way into gemstones and almost like a hermit crab, right? And they like crawl around inside. They appear like small lice in their larval form. They burrow into precious gemstones and slowly coat themselves in crystalline armor. Many varieties exist, favoring different types of gemstones. They're best defeated with bludgeoning damage, as they're highly resistant to this should be slashing and piercing. While most saw Chrismals as pests, some dwarven clans kept them as pets and used them to locate deposits of precious gemstones. You know, classic monster history. Before the sorrows, the Chrismals all fled as their food sources were dwindling, but some dwarves saw this as an omen, right? Like, why are they leaving? With the sudden swelling of gemstones, Chrismals are back in forest. Many gemstones house nests of the creatures. So, hooks. A hoard of gems is ruined by a hive of Chrismals. I think that's good, right? Like, the party encounters a hoard of gems. It's ruined by a hive of Chrismals. By burrowing into a magical gem, a Chrismal nest has gained magic powers. I mean, that's cool, but not necessarily a great random encounter. I think the next one is the party's given a cage of Chrismals and instructed to find rare gemstones. That's a cool adventure hook. I don't know what works for a random encounter, but I think we can spin a random encounter out of it, right? The party... A Chrismal crosses the party's path. Chrismal larva crosses the party's path. If they follow the insect, they can discover a, I don't know what you would call it, like a vein of gemstone that they can harvest themselves, right? Like if you follow them, they'll lead you to the gems. It's cool. So then we need one that's like actually a combat. They're pretty small, right? I mean, that first one could be one, right? The second one seems like it could go either way, right? What's a third? So the first one is the combat because it's a hoard of gems they discover is ruined by a hive of crystals. So they get some magic item, you know. Chrismal larvae cross the party's path. If they follow the insect, they can discover a vein of gemstone that they can harvest themselves. And then... Is it... I mean, this is maybe kind of a chagrin-y one, but is there something about, like, a creature trying to eat one? Or... You know what I mean? Like... having difficulty kind of crunching into it. The Chagrin can eat anything, you know. But I like I think yeah, the Chagrin we kind of described as being like a big bear, right? So if it's like a bear to honey, you know, it's like kind of tucking in and chewing on them, and like, I just worry that that's, yeah, I don't know, so similar to the other ones. What's a good random encounter with one of these creatures? Because like the thing is, they wouldn't attack you. You know what I mean? There's no real reason to fight one. It feels like you'd have to already have gemstones. So yeah, maybe we put that, like a Chrismal, yeah, one of the party's gemstones that already have to have one, like, suddenly animates and crawls away. Crawls away. You know, like there's a Chrismal in it. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Okay, I think the Dow are next. So I feel like every single one of these monsters is me being like, okay, here's the cool thing about my monster. Dow in D&D are like Jinn from the elemental plane of Earth, right? Well, I don't have other planes really on Dune, but I obviously still want to have Genie and Dow and Ifrits and Marids and stuff. So the way I do it is that elementals are created by spellcasters, usually wizards, and that like it's kind of an artificial intelligence thing where there are like different levels of them. Like a Mephit is kind of the lowest level, and then like a kind of CR5 elemental is sort of the idealized form. But then you can kind of like awaken an elemental to turn it into something like a Genie or a Marid or whatever, right? And so that's what a Dow is. It's an awakened earth elemental. The Dow arose when dwarves abandoned their elementals, not realizing they would gain sentience and come to resent their masters. So it's kind of a Skynet, you know, HAL 9000 thing where the dwarves made elementals and then they fled and they just kind of left their elementals behind, not really thinking about it. And then over the course of 500 years, several of these elementals have kind of gained their own sentience, and they, you know, kind of resent the time they spent as like mindless servitors of the dwarves, which kind of like plays into the whole thing about like genies and binding and rings, and like, you know, they still kind of hate, like there's this tension between I'm a wizard, I made this creature, and so it's bound to me, right? And I'm intelligent now, and I realize the things you were doing to me were not, you know, like and I want my freedom, kind of a thing. So I wanted some of that here with the Dow as well. So the Dow culture is constructed upon a foundation of resentment. They hate the dwarves who made them and think of little beyond retribution against those who enslaved them. It is an inherently hypocritical culture, a pale, mocking imitation of the people that they so despise. So, like, they hate that they were enslaved, and so their response is to try to, like, re-enslave people, right? Like, they don't have a way out of that cycle. So here's some hooks we have. We only have two, so it's tricky. Clan Elemental's hold has been claimed by the Dow they left behind, and their entire clan enslaved. Yeah, meh. Doesn't work here. The party encounters an isolated Dow with no knowledge the dwarves have returned to Khûm. I like that one, yeah. The party encounters an isolated Dow with no knowledge the dwarves have returned to Khûm. And then that one, again, is like kind of how you play it, right? Like, you could do it where that the dwarves have returned. That, like, you can convince them that, you know, dwarves aren't so bad. Or you could, you know, it might take that the wrong way. That feels like the middle ground one to me. I think a Dow, like, attacking them in the night, like, gliding into their camp, because Dow have that, like, earth glide thing. So I think a Dow attacking in the night and trying to take them prisoner, I think is fine for just, like, a combat. A Dow attacks the party without warning, attempting to take them prisoner, and enslave them as retribution for their imagined slights. And it's tricky because it's this thing where, like, you know, you could read this as being kind of a yucky theme, right? This notion of like this person was enslaved, and so now all they can think about is enslavement. But what's weird is I don't think of the Tao as being a person in the sense of like when they were enslaved, right? At least in Khûm, they weren't sentient. You know, they're just like a mass of rocks, and then they gained sentience when they were alone, they were free, right? And then they think back to the time like, wait a minute, I must have been a slave, so now I resent them. It's this kind of warped logic, you know, that I think helps you avoid the, you know, I've been like the slavery trauma thing, and you can instead focus on the artificial intelligence angle, right? That like droids in Star Wars, right? Like what is acceptable here? You know, R2-D2 obviously is a person. C-3PO is obviously a person, but there are a lot of droids in those films that just kind of get treated like shit for no reason. Like, is a battle droid a person? And that's kind of more what I want to explore with the Tao and the Jinn, is that like, at what point do you become sentient? And once you are sentient, you know, how do you answer for the things you were made to do when you weren't sentient? That kind of a thing. Is the Tao and the Earth Elemental actually the same creature, even though one has a mind and one doesn't? Great. So that's a combat one. We have a middle of the road one. I like the idea of like a Tao approaching the party for a different reason. You know, this is an intelligent creature, so it could have some other objective that isn't necessarily nefarious, or it could be nefarious, but it doesn't like present that way. What's another like Tao thing to do? Look at the history of it. Yeah. Create Earth Elementals to the power of Ignon. I thought nothing of it. Yeah, they abandoned them, which to throw every dwarf they made into bondage and mockery of the hard labor they once served as elementals. Tao. I feel like we're always having this trick with this third one. We get like two good ones, then it's like, I don't know. A Tao. I wanted to approach the party, right? That it like has an idea or a suggestion. Has to be they're not enslaving retribution, but because that's what you do. Yeah, I think that's what it is, right? That like they think now I'm in power, and so that's what people in power do. Like they kind of like know, they only know what they have seen, right? That like they are intelligent, but again, in the way that a computer program is intelligent, right? Like think like Ultron or something like that. That's kind of more the vibe we're going for with the Tao, where it's like an alien mind that doesn't think in the same way as a human person, or a dwarf in this case. Yeah, that's a great angle to think of it too, Army Kid. Yeah, so it's not so for that, but to enslave them as that's a sign of true power. As a sign of their true power. Because I think it's too much to have just like the Tao offers them gifts, right? That's kind of interesting though. Like, what if you get a Tao that comes in and kind of flatters them and offers to help them and like does all of this stuff, and like maybe it has some sinister intention, but it's like almost a little bit too servile, right? Like, yeah, I think like a helpful Tao ooh, yeah, Jarvis type approach to the party. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. That it's like, it's up to interpretation. Offering to help them. It's up to the party whether they trust this strange being with its alien mind. Yeah. I think Jarvis is a good touch there, yeah, for sure. Because then it could be this ally, right? Like you could form a real bond with this person. And that's kind of similar to this one, but you know, yeah, I think that's cool. All right, Dark Mantle. We talked about the Dark Mantle a little bit. Let's kind of go over it again. A bizarre cephalopodic nightmare. None know the origin of the Dark Mantle, where they come from, nor what they want. Circled by 10 eyes, they resembles a tiny flying octopus. Once it drops onto a victim, it wraps its tentacles around their neck and sends strange visions swimming through their mind. With the victim's mind paralyzed, the Dark Mantle is free to control their body. So they have a new ability, the Possession. So yeah, there was briefly a Dark Mantle panic when the stars were going wrong. So it's very similar to the Cloaker. We have 4 hooks here, actually. Miners are disappearing in the lower tunnels, leaving no trace. While on watch, a character is possessed by a Dark Mantle. Yep, that's definitely one. We have the Cult of the Dark Mantle already. So I think we can repurpose one of those I honestly kind of think the Cloaker ones we can just sort of steal, and we can do like, oh no, here we can do encounter a lost traveler in the Stoneway with a Cloaker attached. Yeah, I think that's cool. 2-army kid, right? It's like, can you impress this this Dow with a Dark Mantle attached? So what I like about the difference between the characters encounter a lost traveler in the Stoneway with a Dark Mantle attached is the same as the characters encounter a lost traveler in the Stoneway with a Cloaker attached. But with a Cloaker, you won't necessarily know. With a Dark Mantle, you would 100% know. And then it's about like peeling it off and who are they and what's their deal. So I think we can also take the Darrow Cult and put it over here and just have it be the same one because it's kind of the same monster. So we'll remove that and make this one about the Dark Mantles. Yeah, cool. Easy. Love it. That's a good one. That's where we just blew through that one. Ooh, the Flumph. I love Flumphs. Let's talk about the Flumph. I should, in full honesty, I don't love the Flumph as written, but I like our Flumphs. So a Flumph is a small subterranean parasite from the deepest reaches of the earth. Flumphs evolved to feed on negative emotions, specifically the supreme negativity of Yogg. Hey, what's up, Jose? Welcome. The idea with a Flumph is that, you know, it is like a totally goofy, derpy being that, you know, was some kind of, you know, subterranean parasite that like was just constantly like the deeper you get into the earth, the closer you get to Yogg's like power, right? Like it's buried beneath this crust of sacra steel, this holy metal that entombs it in the core of the earth. And the idea is that there were lots of creatures that lived down there, and many of them were sort of twisted and turned sort of demonic by the near, like the proximity to Yogg. But the Flumph went the opposite way and like started to like kind of feed on the malevolent energy. And so they kind of developed this immunity to Yogg's emanations, and instead learning to kind of thrive on them. So they're highly intelligent. They dwell in small cloisters deep beneath the earth, and they feed on negative emotion. They're friendly creatures of pure good. They can inadvertently cause harm by their weird psionic aura. So they have a couple of new abilities. They have like a calm emotions ability, where they can't attack, but instead they have an aura that calms hostile emotions. Attacks inside the aura have disadvantage and can only be made after a wisdom save. Evil creatures have disadvantage on the save, right? So it's like they are these little bubbles of like positivity that float around, right? But I also like that means people can't like lie in the aura, and like there's a lot of fun stuff I think you can do with them being these like very just like friendly, helpful kind of goofballs that are immune to the greatest evil in the world. You know, there's something kind of like Hobbit about that I love, and they're just so derpy looking. So here are the hooks we have. A cloister of Flumphs follows the party of Troglodytes through the earth, feeding on their murderous nature. I love that one. Not a very random encounter, but this one's good. A friendly Flumph befriends the party and innocently reveals a dark secret about one of the players. I think that's cool. So yeah, then you meet a Flumph, you know. So we'll do this because I don't want to say like it for sure happens, but like their influence threatening to innocently reveal a dark secret about one of the players, because like being around one, you just have a tendency to speak your mind, you know, like there's no deceit, there's no deception around a Flumph. So then like I'm trying to think if there's some spin on the Troglodyte one, right? Where like they encounter a Flumph that is like pacified a Troglodyte and is like feeding off of its hateful emotion. A Flumph has pacified a Troglodyte, you know, which is arguably the most evil monster in Khûm, and is feeding off its negative emotions of hatred. It's hateful emotions. It's hateful and violent emotions. Yeah, because then it kind of like are Troglodytes evil? Yeah, I think so, and that's the reason this is working. But then it's like if you see it in a non-evil context, you know, all you need is a Flumph to like calm it down, basically. So then here's what's interesting. What's a combat encounter? Yeah, an anti-depression fluff ball. Exactly. What is a combat encounter with a Flumph? You know? Do they find like a dead one? Like, what do you do with that? You either can't. I mean, I feel like you can't have a combat encounter with a Flumph because they just literally can't fight. You know? They're just so derpy and silly. Like, I was having a tough time. Like, I've never liked them, but this is kind of the angle at which the changes you have to make them interesting to me. What's a combat encounter with a Flumph like? What's like an approximation of a combat encounter? You know what I mean? Oh no, yeah, a Flumph wanders into an existing combat. So you roll again, pick a different fight, and then say that a Flumph wanders in and it diffuses the combat. Yeah, that's what it is. Roll again on the table and select the combat encounter. You know, halfway through the combat, a Flumph wanders in and diffuses it. I especially like it if they're fighting. Yeah, what would prey on a Flumph? That's a great question. I have no idea. Hey, what's up, Alan? A tense negotiation that's tilted on mutual deception becomes unglued. Yeah, that's cool. Cool. I love that. Great. That's the Flumph. Love them. I love a good Flumph. I don't know what would eat a Flumph. I think they can be preyed on by, like, you know, demons and stuff, but they're so deep in the earth that, like, there's not a lot that lives down there. You know what I mean? Good question though. Frost Room we did. Galeb Dur we've done. Oh, why am I going back up here? The whole list is down here. Random encounters. Oh, gargoyles are fun. So gargoyles, they're a little bit different all the time. Nasty mob boss deciding how to carve up a city, about to shake hands. Yeah, and then here comes the Flumph. Have somebody that feeds the Flumph make the heroes be near one and force them to give it negative emotions. That's kind of cool, right? It's like one of the hooks I have for them is that a Flumph is used as an interrogation aid by Clan Deepvein to learn secrets from their enemies, right? Like it's what is the little droid in New Hope, right? Like, we have ways of making you talk, kind of a thing, and it's like, hello, it's just like the silliest, goofiest Muppet, you know. So the gargoyles in Khûm, there definitely probably are gargoyles in the sense of, you know, I'm like a scary bird stone monster voiced by Jason Alexander. But I think the ones we've talked about in our streams is that a gargoyle it's an animated construct of stone. The gargoyles of Khûm were created not by dwarves, but by the Darrow, and they are sort of avatars of their madness and confusion. So a gargoyle is a monster, a construct that is made up of all different manner of broken statues. So a Darrow are dwarves that can't create, and so they can't carve their own statues, but they can kind of like horribly remix broken statues into these monsters. And something about their, like, the Darrow's physical or the like creative frustration kind of animates them. So they have no uniformity in design. You know, they might have one wing and 6 arms or 2 heads or whatever, and they're made of all these different disparate parts, and they're kind of driven instantly mad by all this like conflicting purpose. And not all Darrow statues necessarily animate, only a small proportion of them do, right? So you can kind of walk through, you know, like sculpture gardens of Darrow statues, and they're not all going to jump out at you, but one of them might. So there were monsters of frightened dwarven children, a famous story about a Darrow who constructed a gargoyle army, largely a myth. And then, hey guys, are you there? Sorry about that. I think we just disconnected for a second. That was odd. Let me know if you can see and hear me okay. I just got a little notification that said it OBS disconnected. So am I still here? Am I still streaming? Let me know. So we're talking about gargoyles. I think I like they keep noticing missing pieces. We're back. Hey, thanks, Army Kid. It's your boy, world building stream. So what's like, you know, a random one is they get attacked by one. That is a weird interruption. Thank you. I'm not sure. It just, I had a little notification that popped up that just said OBS, you know, connection lost or whatever, and then it popped back up again. So strange. So, what do we do here? What do we do? Like, obviously, one of them is just like a gargoyle attacks the party. You know. They notice the missing pieces is no combat. You know, they come across a Darrow building one, or right. Ooh, yeah. What if it's like this? What if it's like a Darrow flees from the party. If they give chase, their Darrow leads them to its gargoyle like protector. Right. They see a Darrow, it runs off. If they chase after it, if they let it go, then it just runs away. Maybe it tells more people. Maybe it finds someone. But if they chase it, then they kind of run into its gargoyle bodyguards. Yeah. Cool. It's very the Frost Giant's daughter. It's kind of what's in the back of my head there, right? That like Conan chases this woman, and then she leads him to like her two huge brothers. So then one of them is just, you know, a gargoyle attacks the party. Yeah. While crossing through a gallery of Darrow statues, one of them animates and attacks. I feel like the first one and the second one go well together, right? That like you see you're passing this hold and you see all these like arms and faces and things broken off of statues. Like, that's weird, you know. And then eventually you come into the room like, oh, weird. Okay, this is where the somebody made this horrible thing. And then one of them attacks you. I feel like you could easily double those up. That might actually be two separate encounters, right? That's cool. Okay, the cube, the gelatinous cube. Have we done the cube here? I think so. No? Where's the cube? Have we really not done one? Here we go, gelatinous cube. Okay. That's not alphabetical, but oops. Great, so the cube was created by dwarves as custodians of the Stoneway. Gelatinous cubes are mindless oozes that sweep the passages, devouring everything in their path. They are enormous, much bigger than they are normally, and transparent. They conform perfectly to the shape of the tunnel they're sliming down. This means they're not explicitly cubes. They have may have beveled edges or be octagons or some kind of more complex shape. They were developed by a dwarven queen, the queen who came after the queen who built the subways, as a means to keep the stoneways clear. Gelatinous cubes have functioned unchanged for centuries. And that thanks to umber hulks and earthquakes and purple worms kind of damaging the stoneways, now they are occasional hazards beneath Khûm and like other places. We have two hooks here. That's a little odd. While walking between terminals in a defunct stoneway, the party must contend with a gelatinous cube is good. To avoid a racing stone carriage. Oh yeah, that's interesting. That's not really an encounter with one, but I like the idea that they would have like in the stoneway, in the way that there were those like access doors, you know, and like the subway or the metro. That's where they would be. There would be like little alcoves that the cubes would sit in, right, and then they would slime out. So yeah. Oh, okay, that's a good one. So it's like it's a little bit specific, but you know, while traversing the stoneways, the party blunders into a cube, into a gelatinous cube. You know, classic. Nothing wrong with that. Camping in an alcove along the stoneway. The party is horrified to discover their campsite is actually a housing port for a returning gelatinous cube. Because what I like about that is that like, oh, hey, we found this neat alcove. We can camp here, right? And it's this big space, and they don't really understand like what it's for. And then at some point in the middle of the night, a cube just like rolls up and slides back into place. Like it finishes its patrol or whatever, and then comes back and just like slots in and catches them all instantly. Great. And the other one I think I might steal from Colville. I know he did an encounter with his group where the party sees like a floating like skeleton or something like moving towards them, right? And they think, okay, some kind of a lich or whatever, some kind of an undead monster, and they try to attack it, and they realize it's actually just like a skeleton like hoisted in a cube, right? Obviously that probably wouldn't last that long, so maybe it's like a stone, it's like a statue, like a broken statue floating down the corridor. Maybe it doesn't even come after them, right? The party sees a broken statue floating down the Stoneway, unaware that it's caught in a gelatinous cube. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Cool. Easy. So that one was easy. I like that. Giant beetles. Did we do giant beetles? No, they're not on this list, but they're pretty easy. A giant beetle is... It's a beetle, but okay, imagine, if you will, a giant beetle extruding a giant jelly cube through a tiny hole. That is funny. Yeah, if it's like a little like that comes out. Yeah, that's great. I liked how kind of silly they are, for sure. So giant beetles live in the subterranean passages of the Stoneway, and they are I kind of think of them as like livestock, that there are like large herds of them. You know what I mean? Rocketing. They're going. I imagine them still going really slowly. The idea of it just like shooting like a bullet train. Yeah, maybe they go faster. I don't know. That's a good question. But I kind of think of them as like livestock, where they're like big herds of them, kind of big swarms of these giant beetles. And you know, they eat moss and they just kind of like roam around. Like sort of think of them as like cattle, right? And so the idea of encountering them in that way, you know, you can kind of draw on some of the other ones we've done. Like I think there's one we did for Orcs, right? Stuff like that. So I actually don't mind copying over a few of those things. So the Orcs, we have an enormous herd of thousands of Orcs crosses the party's path. They can choose to wade through their numbers, potentially get crushed, or they can wait and delay their journey. That's probably too many, but I like the idea of like a herd or a swarm of these giant beetles like blocking the way forward. So let's do like a swarm. I don't actually need to copy that. A swarm, a large swarm, giant beetles blocks the party's progress through the Stoneway. They can risk provoking them, or they can take a detour that delays them. Cool. They are also like, oh yeah, you gotta do like a lost sheep. Although I think we have done like the cub thing before. Dire wolf. A dead dire wolf has newborn cubs, yeah. Gelatinous cube. Oh, maybe not. I feel like we've done it like the young animal a lot. Attacks the party a hunting hound for a frost giant. Yeah, maybe not as many as I think we have. Because my instinct is that like if it's sort of a livestock metaphor, right? Like these big beetles, that they're kind of used as, you know, herd animals. Yeah, subterranean cattle rustlers for sure. So the Grimlocks are like a subspecies of orc that ended up living in the Stoneways, and they like are herders, and they herd these giant beetles. So that's definitely a thing. I'm trying to figure out like what's the angle on it, because like, you want like a combat one for sure, and that doesn't feel right to me. Yeah, I think we could just do like a Grimlock, a family of Grimlocks and their beetle swarm. Their giant beetle swarm. Offer to help guide the party through the Stoneway, allowing them to go faster. A dispute over grazing rights, yeah, to go faster. Because that feels more like a Grimlock encounter than a giant beetle encounter. Because my instinct is that, yeah, I mean, we need a combat one. I think this is good. I don't think you're wrong, but like I think that's a way down here at the bottom, another stream at some point we'll do is like NPC ideas, and Grimlock herders is definitely one of them. So you're onto the right track, but I'm trying to think of like the Beetles themselves. Let's say we've done a lot, but if we're gonna do like a livestock thing, like a lost beetle larva, the party discovers a lost beetle larva. Larva? There we go. That's slimed away from its herd. If they kill the creature, they will likely provoke. I mean, this isn't how beetles work. It's Mother's Wrath. Yeah, but like, who cares? You know, beetles don't care about their offspring. But I like the idea of seeing like a horrible grub, you know, and being like, ugh, and like killing it, and then discovering like, oh shit, it wasn't just a grub, it was, you know, an immature one of these giant beetles. So that's like, but that's kind of like the first one in the sense that it's like maybe a combat, but I just don't think a giant beetle presents a huge threat to the party. I would say you could do like a bull thing, right, where there's like a beetle wants to like protect the rest of its herd, but we have a bunch of those and other monsters. And there's actually a monster coming up called the Nell Beetle that functions that way. So there's another monster called the Kavaken, which we might talk about in a little bit. That is kind of like an Underdark wolf, right? It's like a bat that doesn't have wings, that just kind of runs around on its weird legs. So it could be that a pack of Kavaken are, what about a beetle stampede? Yeah. A pack of Kavaken cause a beetle stampede. Hunting Kavaken spark a giant beetle stampede. And they're like flying too, rather than like, that's cool. That threatens to trample the party. That's a cool one. I like that. I'm the smartest. Trample the party. Just for you, Alan, I will go down here and I will put Beetle Rustlers as one of the options. Grimlock Beetle Rustlers. Dispute over grazing rights. Cool. Love that. Okay. Ooh, giant leech. Ooh. It's hard to envision an encounter with a giant leech that doesn't result in a combat, right? But like one combat is definitely like when forced to wade through. Ooh, it's a choice, right? Like the party is confronted with an underground river. If they choose to go around. Well, it's not really a choice, I guess. Because, like, do you go around? Sure, then what does it matter? So when forced to wade through an underground river, if they're attacked by leeches, it's just kind of the standard one, right? When forced. Oh, no, because they could, like, fly over it or something like that, yeah. So I actually think the previous framing of it, to wade through, they are attacked by hosts of giant leeches that dwell in the dark water. Cool. That's one. Some kind of medicinal thing obviously occurs to me, but these are big fucking monsters. These are like King Kong giant leech, right? Yeah, giant leech is discovered sucked to a giant monster who cannot remove it. It's just sort of like grabbing at it, like, ugh. I was thinking about that, but that like there's not a ton of them that would like live down underground like this, you know? Like what's a big monster that would be down here? Like a hill giant maybe? Because we're underground, right? So like what's a big monster that has blood? So it can't be something like a Gale of Dur, right? Yeah, I might say just a hill giant. They don't like super live underground, but ice methods, Convicants are too small. Myconid, no. Ogres don't really live underground. Piercer, purple worm. Purple worm would make sense, but I don't think you'd have a lot of like great. This is a juice box. Trog, trolls, Umber Hulk doesn't really have blood. I think it's a hill giant has a thing on it, yeah, and it can't get it off its back. It's a little silly, but I think that could work. Giant Leech, a hapless hill giant, has somehow gotten a giant leech attached to an inconvenient area and begs the party's assistance in removing it. So what's like a non? I mean, that's kind of a non-combat encounter because I feel like the hill giant could like squash the leech if it could just get its hands on it. Giant leech non-combat encounter, like the monster, the animal ones are always the hardest ones. I don't even think we have an entry for the giant leech. A lot of these giant ones get kind of like a giant this, a giant that, a giant this. We only have one more. It's a giant spider, and that should be pretty easy to do. So I might leave the leech for now, just because like I'm getting a little burnt out on this is a big bug. But giant spider, I'm not too worried about. I think we can come up with some cool giant spider ideas. So there's the classic, like, you know, descends from the ceiling and grabs you and pulls you up, but that's pretty similar to the cave fisher. So we might want to leave that one alone. Definitely one of these is kind of the Ettercap one, where the tunnels and passages ahead are coated in thick spider webs with bundled corpses swinging from the ceiling. Like, you never actually see it, but you kind of like that atmospheric idea. You do the trapdoor spider, right? Where it's like they walk along and the thing flips. A trapdoor spider, a giant spider lurks beneath a trapdoor, a stone trapdoor. Yeah, a giant spider lurks beneath a stone trapdoor and ready to leap out at the party as they pass. And the one that could be a combat but isn't necessarily the one that could go that way, you know. I like the idea of like a web or something that's like across a chasm, or, you know, they have to quickly scamper along a giant web, and if they take too long, it summons a big spider. Yeah, cool. To cross a chasm, the characters, it's kind of like the leeches one, right? Where like they could find another way across it. Must scamper along a spider's web, summoning a giant spider from a distance. Scamper along the spider's web and reach the other side before the giant spider finds them. That's what it is. And reach the opposite side before the spider reaches them. Cool. Along a giant spider's web. Cool. Doing all these underground ones is frying my brain a little bit, I think. Okay, cool. These ones are fun. So the growl. Let's talk about the growl. The growl, as written, is a like weird worm thing with like 4 hooked mouths, whereas a do I not? Where's the growl? Why am I bad at alphabets? I did a growl. I know I did. What? I did a whole thing on the growl. Where did it go? Oh no. Well, that's fine. I can dig it up later. I remember what they are. I thought I did the growl. Oh no, I did the grick. I mean, the grick and the growl mixed up. So we haven't actually done the growl. Okay, well, we'll skip the growl for now. We can do the grick. Yeah, I was flipped around. The grick. So the grick is this is the one that's the worm with the like hooked, like the 4-pronged kind of hooked mouth. I have kind of redone them as being similar, but less of a of just like a monster that slows up to you and attacks. So, wriggling subterranean predators, Gricks cannot burrow, but instead can squeeze and compress their bodies into whatever shapes needed, allowing them to lie unseen in cracks and crevices and then snatch their prey. None have ever seen an actual Grick, instead of only its beaked tendrils. Those that survive a Grick attack, pulled into a crevice, savaged by hooks and suckers, testify to a serrated beak at the center of the tentacles and a long worm-like body. Once severed, a hooked tentacle will attempt to squirm away, where it will grow like a flatworm into an adult Grick. So it's not that like this thing moves up to you and goes, meh. I think we have tons of that. It's that if there's a crack in the wall, you know, there might be a Grick's tendril like lurking inside of it, and they have these like impossibly long, almost like vines that they can like you know, they sit in some hollow in the earth and then extend their tendrils out like tree roots near cracks that open into other tunnels, grab things and pull them in, right? Like, yeah, Grello, their floaty beak brain. You're exactly right. I just got them switched up. So the conceit then is that, like, that's one of the reasons dwarves are so paranoid. Also, hey, welcome, chat owner. One of the reasons dwarves are so paranoid about cracks and crevices in their stonework is that, like, it's kind of that, like, that's how you get ants thing. Like, what, do you want grells? Now I got it mixed up. What, you want Gricks in here? You got to close these up. And so then during the Seven Sorrows, these earthquakes that kind of rent the stone, you know, suddenly saw this uptick in the number of Gricks able to kind of squirm their way through. So there's one, the Dwarven complex is home to a gargantuan Grick with many dozens of tendrils and appendages. That's pretty yucky. An escaped Grick tendril causes further problems to the party when it burrows somewhere new and troubles the miners. A crevasse filled with bones heralds the territory of a Grick. A crevasse filled with bones. Yeah. I kind of like that one. I like the idea of a severed Grick tentacle as well. That maybe they see one, right? That, like, wriggling its way along. Yeah. A severed Grick tentacle. Squirms past the party. Headed for a new crack. I mean, one of them is just like while crossing the Stoneway. Oops. While crossing the Stoneway. Why am I bolding Stoneway? The Stoneway. A Grick tendril lashes out from a crack, pulls the character in. What's horrible about that is that, like, you can imagine a scenario where, like, if it's a very thin crack in the stone, right? And then the Grick, like, grabs somebody and pulls them towards the crack. The strength of the... Don't get your Grick in your crack. Yeah, exactly. The strength of the Grick is such that it can, like, I think, pull the body through... You know, like breaking the bones and like compressing it down. Like, that's very horrifying. So maybe one of them is like, they find like a body that's like been compressed and like yanked through, right? Like boots or something like that, like part of a corpse. Or, oh, it's like happening. Yeah, they like, oh my God. They watch, the party watches in horror as a Grick as someone, a dwarven traveler, presumably, is pulled or a dead dwarven traveler, inch by inch into a like 6-inch crack in the stone. And their legs are like kicking and like, ugh, yeah, peels you out of your armor and like, ugh, it's so gross. I love that. Cool. Okay. Awesome, that's the Grick. I think next up would be the Hook Horror. So the Hook Horror is basically the monster that you find in Dungeons & Dragons. I just added a little bit of an extra flavor to it. Where in D&D, there are these big, like, carapaced, you know, penguin geese things. But their thing that's unusual about them is that they're known to be, like, unnaturally aggressive. I kind of think of the Hook Horror as being sort of a big, scary, monstrous version of like a goose, right? That like they're nasty and mean and they're very territorial and they have a tendency to just like hound and plague people that don't leave them alone. Yeah, living in small clutches, hook horrors are matriarchal and fiercely territorial, akin to a goose in aggressive behavior. Hook horrors are known to hold grudges and will haunt dwarven holds until either killed or appeased. So these are the hooks. Get it? Dwarven miners upset a hook horror who vows revenge. Myconids reach out to the party begging for help against the hook horrors, right? Because they eat. Yeah, I love hook horrors. Reach out to the party begging for help against hook horrors because they eat fungi. They use their hooks to like scrape the moss and the fungi off of rocks. And the party wanders into a hook horror nest and are plagued by the beasts. Yeah. So I think just like the party upsets a hook horror that follows them and won't leave them alone. Upsets a hook horror that follows them and won't leave them alone. A myconid, I like the myconid thing, right? A myconid psychically or psionically reaches out, asking to be rescued from the hook horror. Okay. To the party asking for rescue. Yeah, for rescue from the hook horror. Myconid's not the one to capitalize. Hook horror is. Cool. And then one that's like not a combat and couldn't be a combat. Unless they really tried. A hook horror egg or something like that. Have we done an egg? Yeah, we have. Oh no, those ones are, yeah. Carrion Crawler. Yeah, we've done like ice toad ones. A clutch of ice toad eggs. And that's why none of the other dwarves were picnicking there. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, real quick, as a side note, one of the it turns out one of the what was I gonna say? One of the hooks for the ice toad when random encounters I really like is that while camping, an ice toad's consistent croaking keeps them awake all night, forcing the characters to make Constitution saving throws against exhaustion on their next check in the skill challenge. Right, that like there's a loud croaky. Yeah, I don't know what would hunt a hook horror. That's a good question. Yeah. What would do that? Hook horrors. There's not a lot of like, yeah, predators down here, actually, it occurs to me. A grick, maybe? That might be hard to pull through a hole. I'm now looking for like something that could hunt it. Oozes, definitely. Odiugs, maybe. Piercers, ropers. I don't have roper in here. Oh, we gotta get roper in here. Roper. I want one that's like not a Troglodytes definitely would. I think I have a tendency to make monsters that aren't quaggoths maybe too, that aren't predators. I have a tendency to make like big scary herbivores because I kind of think those are more interesting as monsters. I'm tempted to go with an egg or something like that. I almost like the idea of like a hook horror. Ooh, they molt and become susceptible. Yeah, what about like a weird naked hook horror that runs away from them? That's it. It's all weird and like wobbly. I love that. The party encounters a recently molted hook horror that flees in wobbly terror from them. I think it's like Zoidberg, right? Like there's an episode where Zoidberg molts, and then he's like all like soft and gooey. It's totally the same thing. He's even got the hooks, right? Did you see me escaping? I was all whoop 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 whoop. Great, the Kavakin. Enormous flightless bats. Kavakin are pack hunters that stalk the enormous insects that dwell in the many caverns of Khûm. Bats that long ago lost the need for their vestigial wings, the Kavaken are surprisingly agile on the ground and especially on cavern walls. They communicate primarily by echolocation and are quite social animals, living in large packs of a dozen or more. They're quite tactical when they hunt, surrounding and overwhelming their prey. They're basically like, I think there's a monster that's like a bat-faced wolf, and I kind of took it a step further and said, no, you know what? They're actually bats. So the only history note I have here is that like Grimlock herders rear eggheads as sheepdogs to up the board against Kavaken attacks. The party must escort a valuable goat through Kavaken territory. That's cool. A pack of Kavaken attack the party, unwittingly infecting them with troglodyte lice. Ooh, I like that one. That's a really good one. They might carry a disease. Although, I think when I wrote that, I wasn't thinking about COVID. That's oh dear. That's Troglodyte. Yeah, it's Troglobite when they're little. Yeah. I wasn't thinking about disease-carrying bats. Oh dear. But that's a good one. It's combat, but it's got like a twist, right? It isn't just that they get attacked; it's that there's a chance they might get infected with troglodyte lice. What do I'm trying to think of a non-combat one. I've done so many encounters that are like wolves and crag cats and snow lions and like large pack hunting animals that I'm kind of fresh out. I think they do a cool thing that they climb on the ceiling in the way that bats do. Is there something with that? Probably not. I'm a little out of ideas, I feel like. Boy. So yeah, they hunt giant beetles, and so we kind of did one. Yeah, you know what? Let's cheat and let's steal one from Giant Beetle, where Giant Beetle, a pack of hunting Kavaken spark a giant beetle. I even bolded the wrong one. A giant beetle stampede. Well, yeah, do it. Copy it now when it's not bolded, and then copy that. Sorry. Kavaken. So I think we're gonna steal this one. Cheat a little bit. I have a pack of hunting Kavaken. Spark a giant beetle stampede. So like the wounded animal, the one with the baby, the one that's courting, the one that's this, the one that's that, right? Like I've done so many different animal random encounters that at this point they're getting pretty thin. But it feels like it's something with like Grimlocks and sheepdogs and stuff like that, right? I feel like we've done a lot of these are both combat. So like I would like to do one that is not a combat. It's like a bat thing. Oh, is it just like hear the echo? Right? Like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I don't know how it necessarily affects them. But I like the idea of them hearing the little like bips and like echoing calls. That's cool. Yeah. So it's like the equivalent of hearing a wolf howl, right? As the party travels, they hear the echoing calls of Kavaken. Ricocheting? I don't know. Off the cavern walls. Not a great encounter. It's kind of a background detail, but like as I say, I think I'm losing some steam here. Have followed minstrels either because they like or hate the sound of their music. Oh, that's kind of cool. I don't hate that, Alan. That's actually pretty good. Caught in a web is good too. But they don't fly, right? I like the idea of like, yeah, a humming or singing character attracts a Kavaken who follow them with interest. Yeah, that's cool. With interest. Though they don't attack, they just like follow him, right? Like they're kind of obsessed with it. That's cool. I like that. So then what I like about that one too is that like you frame it as, who among the group is most likely to be like singing to themselves, right? And then, I probably would at some point. Like, great, while you do that, like giving them like a little bit of agency, like who's the one that they become obsessed with. Yeah, ooh, that's cool. Follow them with interest and potentially sing back. That's very good, Alan. I like that. Because I think some of them are fun if they're these weird, like, uncombat, memory moments. That's very cool. Okay, Nell Beetle. A subspecies of giant beetle, a Nell Beetle uses its subsonic abilities to protect and guide the swarms of its kin through the many tunnels of Khûm. So the Nell Beetles are very silly. They are ordinary beetles, but they have like these big honking like cartoon like horns on their heads. Not like horns like a rhino, but horn like a trumpet. But the cone projects a subsonic frequency that allows the Nell Beetle to loosen the earth and allow other members of its swarm to pass through it. So they basically create like a phasing effect. Like, hey, they kind of like mess with the molecules. It's such a subsonic frequency that it allows members of their herd to like pass through these walls, right? And then it stays like that for a certain period. This leaves no opening for a predator to follow as long as the Nell Beetle continues to use its horn. It can also weaponize these sonic blasts against predators. It should be also, not only. Yeah, cool. So a Grimlock herder has asked the party to help them locate a lost and willful Nell Beetle. Again, so this is kind of like the bull, right, of the herd. The party accidentally stumbles through a tunnel weakened by a Nell Beetle. I kind of like that one. The party is able to enter a complex by manipulating a Nell Beetle into using its sonic powers. So what if it's like party accidentally stumbles through a tunnel weakened by a Nell Beetle? I think is a good one. This saves them a day. This either saves them a day. Like, yeah, they must make a survival check. Wisdom survival check. To reorient themselves. Ooh, a character does it. Or become lost. I like that. You definitely do one where it's like a territorial Nell Beetle. A territorial Nell Beetle blasts the party for coming too close to its swarm. A bull Nell Beetle, like a lone Nell Beetle, creates a path the party can follow. Creates a path the party can follow. Party can follow, provided saving them time, but providing. They're big. Nell Beetles are like huge. So these are giant beetles, right? And so this is like a beetle the size of a cow or a bull. Huge. I don't know what they are in actual D&D, but in Khûm they're very, very big. That they don't provoke it. Cool. Quick and dirty. Nice. Let's see. we've got about 15 minutes. I want to try to get 3 more of these done. Okay, the lith. A lith is like the magical equivalent of like a malfunctioning animatronic. Once an animated statue, a lith has long since malfunctioned, either from overuse, lack of use, depleted magical energy, or a dozen other reasons. Each lith is different, depending on how and why it was created. Many are stationary, most resemble dwarven figures of old, all are made of stone, but none are truly sentient. Unlike an earth elemental or a Tao, a lith is the remnant of an unthinking automaton, often made for one purpose and one alone. The longer they remain operational, the higher the likelihood of malfunction. Right, it's kind of that like chaos theory thing. The longer that they're doing their thing, increased chance they break down. So the hooks are, the party uncovers a dwarven stronghold overflowing with lith. Okay, kind of meh. A Tao commands a small army of lith, a shepherd to a lost flock. It's kind of cool. A lith is enchanted to recite a password, but time has garbled the words. So those are all kind of story stuff. I don't mind them seeing one. Yeah, 9 foot. They're probably a little bit lighter than Beetles, but they, is that what they are in actual D&D? 9 feet? Oh, 9 feet long. I was imagining 9 feet tall. I was like, oh my God, that's way bigger than I thought. So the threat here is interesting because the threat is disquiet. While a lith may occasionally attack or threaten the party, a lith's primary function is more to disquiet and unnerve them, to convey time and dread. So again, right, like a malfunctioning kind of Friday night at Five Nights at Freddy's, that's what it is. Spooky sort of animatronic thing, but it's a magical stone statue that's kind of glitching and malfunctioning in that way. So I think there's like I like the garbled one, but I like the idea of an encounter where, like, if the point is to disquiet and unnerve them, that like the party hears a lith, hears a strange dwarven voice speaking garbled phrases from somewhere in the tunnels. In the tunnels, they eventually discover a lith rambling insensibly from some wall, right? That's cool. And yeah, it's just like you're hearing they're saying these weird, disturbing things, right? They can't figure out what it is. So one of them has to be, I would like one of them to be combat. And I think we can make like a combat version of this. It's an animated statue, but it's not a golem, right? It doesn't like serve a master. It's not an earth elemental. It's not a Tao. So it's a statue with a particular purpose to like guard a passageway or something like that. So, like, I mean, a character accidentally triggers an animated statue to attack, but its many malfunctions reveals it to be a lith. I think that's fine. An animated statue, character accidentally triggers an animated statue to attack. Accidentally triggers an animated statue to attack, but thanks to its many malfunctions, it's clearly a lith. And then lastly, so the first one's definitely not combat. The second one is combat. The third one can kind of go either way. A docent guide that shows the safe path through a museum. Ooh, that's really good. Yes, I love that. A friendly lith offers to guide the characters forward, but its mind garbled actually leads them into other danger. Whether, roll again on the table and choose the most relevant encounter. Yeah, that's great, dude. I love that. That very spooky, like, if you'll head this way kind of a thing. Nice. Good one, Shadow Owner. Okay, Myconid and then Gray Ooze. Those are both actually pretty juicy monsters, so that shouldn't be too hard. Okay, the Myco. So my Myconids are a little bit different. They are less like a standing mushroom dude, and they're more just like awakened mushrooms. Is the term. The kind of standard version you see of the Myconid is actually like an animated corpse, right? That has like the mushroom growing where the head used to be and things like that, right? That the spores get into the body, and then when they die, they turn into these kind of mushroom people. Is a peaceful plant creature that abhors violence, but instead wants total assimilation into its colony via indoctrinating spores. A little more than awakened mushrooms, most Myconids are inanimate thinkers, dreaming of mental realms beyond human contemplation. Only when a humanoid accepts the spores can the Myconids ambulate. The spores are voluntary. An intelligent creature must choose to accept them. As a massive multicellular organism, Myconids don't care at all for the individual, only for the collective. Dwarves distrust Myconids, fearful of losing themselves to spores. Fear of infection leads them to extra caution when eating mushrooms. So our hooks are, one dwarven clan has essentially fallen prey to the Myconids and now dwells as mushroom people. Meh. The party accidentally ingests a Myconid and spores and goes bananas, kind of that C-team thing. And then the Myconids have information the party needs, but they must commune with them in order to learn that information. So definitely the party accidentally ingests some Myconid spores. That's a good one, right? It goes bananas. I don't know about the consent thing. It's tricky, but yeah. I like the idea of them being like really friendly. That like it's not a matter of like, oh, we want to kill you, but there is this edge of assimilation, right? That like, why wouldn't you want to join the colony? I don't understand. So the threat is assimilation. While completely non-violent, the Myconid threatens the character's identity. Will you join the glorious fungal colony? So they don't attack. So that's the question, right? I wonder if you do an inverse thing where you get like a character or a dwarf or a darrow who attacks the party, believing them to be a myconid, right? That like somebody who is terrified of them as a result, you know? So definitely like a parlay one. I like that they go bananas. Maybe that's the combat one because they might turn on each other. But I guess myconid spores wouldn't make you turn violent, right? I like the idea of Darrow being horrified by them or something like that, right? So like a Darrow, like a Darrow warband attacks the party, believing them infected with the spores. And what I like about that one too is that like you might not know we might not have encountered myconids yet, right? Yeah, that's true. Thankfully there will be no Warforged in the campaign, so. But yeah, I love the idea of a Warforged. Like that, you're right. Watching that and being like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right? So I think the Ghost Bananas one is kind of the middle encounter. The Darrow Warband is the combat, and then there's got to be just like a peaceful one, right? Like, I mean, honestly, even just as simple as like the party walks through a myconid grove, and you know, the party walks through a myconid grove and is invited to join the colony. Right, just like perfectly pleasant experience, if a little bit unnerving. Great, and then lastly, the Gray Ooze. So this is, I think originally, yeah, they're kind of like it's stone that's been warped, but on Dune, it's storm that's specifically been warped by Yogg. Vaughn, you're here. We got 5 minutes. I swear, every stream that I've done for the past like month, somebody has come in the past 5 minutes. And I'm always like, oh, well, I'm happy that you're here, Vaughn. You can help us with our last monster and our last random encounter. We're talking about Gray Ooze. And on Dune, Gray Ooze is kind of like stone that has been infused with Yogg's essence. And so it's kind of intentionally trying to eat away at the... oh, that's true. Yeah, they previously had issues with the hook horrors as well. That's trying to eat away at the sacristial like crust that protects the world from Yogg. So Gray Ooze is kind of like the little tendrils of Yogg trying to eat away at metal specifically. It's like why it mechanically eats metal armor and metal weapons. Living stone, imbue with Yogg's essence, it seeks only to dissolve metal, blah, 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 blah. It does so by burning through stone in its hunt. Gray stone is perhaps responsible for some of the veins going dry, burning away the roots and not allowing it to grow. Perfectly disguised against gray stone, strangely eroded passageways may be an indicator of the presence of Gray Ooze. Great. So Gray Ooze eats away at the ore deposits below Horn Hollow. A good adventure hook, not a great random encounter. Sections of the Stoneway collapse thanks to undermining by Gray Ooze. I don't mind the idea of like a cave-in. Yeah, a cave-in coupled with like Gray Ooze that drops down on you is cool. Ooh, bottled Gray Ooze is used to sabotage, meant to impoverish a rival clan. So yeah, the party like recovering a bottle of Gray Ooze, I think is cool. The party recovers a bottle of Gray Ooze, uncertain of its properties. And, you know, you can kind of have like a Cowboy Bebop, like it slithers away, and, you know, if you bring it home and uncork it to test it out, now it's like loose, right? It might eat your metal, it might do whatever. So then I think you can do like a cave-in. Yeah, a tunnel the party is passing through unexpectedly collapses due to Gray Ooze undermining the pillars or supports. You know, maybe the Gray Ooze attacks, maybe it just collapses it on them. And then something more direct about it kind of going after their metal, right? Yeah, a character, this is a little obvious, but a character with a sacristial item. With a sacristial item is targeted by
Targeted by... Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the Roper Vaughn. The Roper in on Dune is like a stone pillar that like an eye has been carved into to turn into a spy for Yogg. But I love the idea that that's how you make it, right? You carve like a certain phrase or whatever. Like cultists can turn stone into gray ooze by like inviting Yogg's essence into it. That's fucking metal. I'm gonna put that in here. Yogg cultists can create. See, you're here for like a minute. You're already like dropping bombs. Can create gray ooze by carving incantations into stone and inviting the essence of Yogg into it. Great. Remember the sacristeel item is targeted by a gray ooze. I kind of think just like a gray ooze drips from the ceiling above them. Or they step on a... You know what? A character sits on a boulder to rest, only to discover it's actually a blob of gray ooze. A blob of gray. Like something kind of silly. I like that. Cool. Then that is where we're going to stop because it's exactly 8 o'clock right now. But we did a lot of hooks, guys. So let's see. We did gray ooze. We did myconid. We did lith. We did Nell Beetle. We did Kavaken. We did Hook Horror is 6. 7 with the Grick. 8 with the Giant Spider. 8.5 with the Giant Leech. 9 with the Giant Beetle. 10 with the Gelatinous Cube. 11 with the Gargoyle. 12 with the Flumph. 13 with the Dark Mantle, 14 with the Dow, 15 with the Chrismal, 16 with the Cloaker. I'll say 17 with the Chagrin because it was half one for the Giant Leech. 18 for the Carrion Crawler. Yeah, we did 19, 20. We did 20, exactly. That's cool. We did 20, so 60 adventure hooks or in random encounters. So I think it's pretty good. Ooh, people can use gray ooze to track sacristeel. I have like a dozen monsters that can be used to track stuff, but I actually think that's a cool way to do it. I don't know that anyone would have thought of that yet, but I could see it like a party thinking of that, right? It's specifically kind of designed to eat sacristeel, so that's a perfect use of it. Cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out. My headache has kind of gone away a little bit, which is surprising considering that I've been staring at screens all day. But I was so happy to get a chance to stream with y'all again. I will unfortunately not be able to stream next Sunday because my sister is in town, so I have some family visiting. Yeah, an evil compass metal detector, precisely. So I'll be busy next Sunday, but I will still be streaming the rest of this week. So I'll be here on Tuesday. We're doing some adventure prep. I'm going to crack into Wild Beyond the Witchlight and see if I can like make heads or tails of it because I desperately need to. And then I have on Thursday, we'll be doing another monster design stream. Those have been a little ill-attended lately. I think it's probably a timing issue. I think Thursday is a good day for me to stream, but it's this weird thing where, like, theoretically, I could stream later in the day, but, like, you know, you don't really want to do that while Critical Role still exists. I mean, I know they're off right now, but it's like, I don't want to set up Thursday nights as a streaming time because that's kind of, you know, shooting yourself in the foot. So I've been trying to do it earlier in the day, but they've been very ill-attended lately. Unlike the Sunday night streams, I think we have really good attendance for. So I'm not sure about that. I like doing them. It helps me like get the work out, but it might I might have to move the time. Yeah, I'm happy to be streaming again, Vaughn. Thanks for coming and hanging out. It's sometimes really hard to motivate myself to do this. Something I said at the beginning of the stream, but every time I do, every time I do, I'm really grateful that I did. You know, I'm always happy to look at the progress we made, and I love talking to you guys, and all these ideas are so much better than the stuff I would come up with on my own, you know? So it's always good to do it, but like the stress and the pressure of getting it going and doing it and performing, you know, it can sometimes discourage me from streaming more when I really should be. But yes, Tuesday, Thursday, for sure. And then, but I'll be missing next Sunday. But this Thursday's cool. We're going to do the Mind Flayer on Thursday as a monster redesign. I'm really excited about that because we've
That's one I've been looking forward to for a long time. There's a cool new Monster of the Week episode that dropped today with a friend of mine named Myth. Check it out. It's a great episode. He's got some thoughts about mind flayers, which is cool. And we'll take some of those thoughts into consideration when we do our redesign on Thursday. If you like this channel and you like this content, please consider subscribing. I think most people in the chat at this point are subscribed, but if you're lurking or you're coming to watch the VOD, click that subscribe button, that like button. We obviously really appreciate it. If you like my content, you can find me a bunch of other places. I'm on Twitter. I am on Discord. We have a Patreon. You can find all those links below. I am also a independent professional dungeon master. So if you visit my website, pro-dm.net, you can hire me to run a game for you, and I might even run a game for you in Khûm if you really want to. But it might be a lot of me explaining how my monsters are a little bit different, and that might get too obnoxious. So it might be better just to hire me to run something in a generic world where I don't need to do that every time. But great, thank you so much for coming and for watching, and hopefully I will talk to you all soon. I gotta remember the goodbye in Dwarven, because I always do the hello, right, which is Ojvazod Odvari, which means are you working in Dwarven, but then are you working dwarves, and there's a response to that, but I think the response in Dwarven translates to like, well, I suppose, like, I should get back to work. I'll have to look it up. I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, that was what I was going to do too. Vaughn had brought this up on Twitter. He made me think of it. I want to do a language stream one of these days. That would be fun. So maybe not next week because we'll be gone, but I think maybe the Sunday after that, I'll do a Dwarven language stream. I don't know how I would structure it, but it's really fun to work on, and I haven't actually gotten a chance to do some language stuff. Okay, anyway, thank you for coming. I appreciate everybody being here, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Adios.